Hello everyone and welcome. In this video, I am going to show you how to add client validation to your ASP.NET Core application without using jQuery. Instead, we are going to use ASP.NET Client Validation Library. It's a client-side validation library with no dependency on jQuery. You can visit the GitHub page for this library and read the documentation for more detail. Let's take a look at the demo for this tutorial. This is the default application created with ASP.NET Core templates with just little modification. I added a contact page with a simple form. If I click the submit button without properly filling the form, then the submission will fail with client validation messages. This validation runs totally on the client without using jQuery. Let's examine the source for this page. As you can see in the document head, there's no reference to jQuery on the page. The only file that has anything to do with validation in the document head is the ASP.NET Validation CSS file. If I scroll down to the bottom of the page, there is no reference to jQuery either. What's responsible for the client-side validation is this portion of the code right here. First, I'm importing the client's validation.js file. Then right here, I'm initializing the client-side validation. Alright, let's dive right into it. I'm using VS Code for this tutorial, so I'll go right ahead and create a new ASP.NET Core web app. And validation. Next, I'll open the project. We use the window. The first thing we are going to do is to create the contact page. So I'll open all the pages folder, new file, contact.cshtml. Next, I'll create the model file for the contact page, contact.cshtml.cs. The next thing I'm going to do is to paste the code for the contact model. This is just a basic class definition for the contact model with properties with some validation attributes. So there's no point for you watching me type all that. Next step is to create the form for the contact page. I'm going to paste the code for the view and then explain it. Nothing too complex is happening here. This is just a basic form with bootstrap styling and some validation message fields. You can get this code from the GitHub repository for this video from the link in the description. At the bottom of the file, I'm adding the validation script partial view. If we run this app right now, it's going to use the standard jQuery client validation ship with ASP.NET Core app. And we can confirm that by opening the validation partial view. Let's try and run the app to be sure everything is working as expected. I'll close this. .NET. Let me navigate to the contact page. If I leave the fields empty and click the submit button, the validation will fail with validation errors. This shows that the validation is working as expected. But right now we are using jQuery validation and we can confirm that by going to the source of the page. I'll scroll down to the bottom of the page. As you can see, we see depends on jQuery for our validation. All right, now let's change that. One nice thing I like about ASP.NET Client Validation is that it's a drop-in replacement for the built-in jQuery validation. Now let's go ahead and replace the jQuery validation with ASP.NET Client Validation. To add the library to our project, we need access to the necessary files, and from here you can get the instruction on how to get the files. I already have the files downloaded, so I'll go ahead and add them to the application. Inside the www.root/lib, I'll create a new folder. I'll create a new folder for ASP.NET Client Validation. Next, I'll copy this folder from the library to the newly created folder in the application. Ctrl+C to copy. Ctrl+V to paste. Here are the files for ASP.NET Client Validation. Let's go ahead and implement it. Now that we have the client validation files, the next thing we're going to do is to add the style for the validation and remove jQuery dependency in the layouts file. So let's do that. Right here, I'm going to add the file for this. So this line, I'm going to have to duplicate this and change the paths. ASP.NET. Next, we are going to replace jQuery validation files with ASP.NET Client Validation file. In the validation script partial file, I'm going to comment out line 1 and 2. For that, we duplicate this line and change the paths. The last thing we need to do is to initialize ASP.NET validation. ASP.NET Client Validation exposes ASP.NET Validation objects in global Windows objects. So to initialize the client validation, we need to call the validation service through ASP.NET Validation objects. Now let's do that. I'll create a script tag and then a validation service. v.bootstrap to initialize the client validation. All right, we are done. Now let's test this. Right, I'll go to the contacts. And let's try submitting the form. Great. Now everything is working as expected. Let's view the page source to confirm that we are no longer using jQuery for our client validation. As you can see, the client validation no longer depends on jQuery. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button and like this video. Thank you for watching.